Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles. I'm dealing with one of the worst situations of my life. Discovering that my marriage has been nothing but lies for the past few months has shattered everything I thought I knew. I've been watching Laura closely, noticing the subtle changes in her behavior, and that's what led me to figure out what was really happening. The woman I married, the person I believed I knew better than anyone else, turned out to be someone completely different. And the worst part, I was blind to it for years. I used to think our relationship was special, different from others. We weren't like those couples who lost their spark, who drifted apart, or betrayed each other. No, we had something solid. At least that's what I convinced myself. Now I realize how naive I was. I built my world around a version of Laura that never truly existed, or at least not in the way I had imagined. We've been married for almost 6 years now, and I still remember how we met like it was yesterday. It was at a Best Buy of all places. I was picking out parts for a custom PC build knee and research with about 5 different spec sheets spread out in front of me. Laura walked up, looking completely lost in the monitor section. I guess she noticed how focused I was because she hesitated before finally speaking. "Hey, sorry to bother you, but you look like you know what you're doing. Any chance you could help me pick out a good monitor?" she had asked. Smiling sheepishly, I glanced up a little surprised, but I couldn't help but return her smile. "Sure, what are you looking for? Gaming work, a bit of both?" She laughed. "Gaming mostly. I'm building my first setup, but honestly, I have no idea what I'm doing." That was all it took. We started talking, and before I knew it, I was walking her through refresh rates, response times, and color accuracy. She listened intently, nodding along as I explained the differences between IPS and TN panels. We ended up chatting for almost an hour before she finally picked a monitor, and just before we parted ways, she hesitated. "You know, I feel like I owe you a coffee for all this help," she said, her eyes hopeful I wasn't going to say no. That quick coffee turned into a 3-hour conversation about everything from gaming to software development. She told me about her job as a software developer. And since I was working in it at the time, we had plenty to talk about. The connection was instant, effortless. Our relationship moved fast after that. We dated for 3 years, moved in together, and even adopted a cat, a little black and white troublemaker named Pixel. Everything felt right, natural when I proposed during a weekend trip to Seattle where we were attending a gaming convention. It felt like the perfect moment, and the wedding. Small, intimate. Exactly what we wanted. At least, that's how I remember it now. Though all those memories feel like scenes from a movie that I convinced myself was real, looking back, I wonder how much of it was genuine, and how much was just me seeing what I wanted to see. Laura has 2 close friends, Kimberly and Carol, who she's known since college. The 3 of them are inseparable weekly video calls, girls' trips celebrating every major life event together. It's like they have their own little world. I got to know them well over the years. While I wouldn't call them my closest friends, we've always gotten along at social gatherings. We chat, we laugh, and sometimes we even hang out as couples, since they're both married too. Kimberly and Carol have been there for all of our big moments. Our engagement party, our housewarming, even smaller milestones like our anniversary celebrations. They were always around laughing with Laura, making plans and sharing their inside jokes. I never had a reason to question their friendship. If anything, I was glad she had such strong, long-lasting bonds with them. But now, thinking back, I wonder if I was just too trusting. The first red flag came out of nowhere. It was a regular work day, and I happened to come home early. As I stepped into the house, I heard Laura talking in the home office. That wasn't unusual. She spent a lot of time chatting with Kimberly and Carol. What was strange, though, was how she reacted the moment I walked in. She was sitting at her desk, phone propped up mid-conversation. But the second she saw me, her whole demeanor shifted. Her body tensed, and she changed her tone immediately. Instead of the usual animated way she talked with them, laughing loudly and throwing in her usual sarcastic comments, she suddenly sounded off. Her voice became controlled, like she was trying too hard to sound casual. "Hey, babe," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "What are you guys gossiping about this time?" Laura let out A short, forced laugh. "Oh, nothing much. Just making some weekend plans." I raised an eyebrow. "Anything fun?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Just the usual stuff." "You know how it is," that was all she said before quickly steering the conversation away. Shifting in her seat as if waiting for me to leave something about the way she brushed me off didn't sit right. Normally, Laura had no problem telling me what they were up to. Sometimes she'd even over-explain just to keep me in the loop. But this was different. I walked out of the office, but something made me linger near the door. I wasn't sure why, but her sudden change in behavior noted me, so I stayed quiet listening. That's when I heard it whispering. Laura was never one to whisper. On the phone with them, if anything, she was usually loud laughing at inside jokes and telling long-winded stories, but now her voice was hushed, barely audible. I could make out bits and pieces of the conversation, just enough to catch something odd. "Yeah? He's still at work." She muttered a pause. Then, I know, but we have to be careful." I frowned. Who was he and what did they need to be careful about? I stayed as still as possible, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. They were talking. About some trip, probably the Cabo trip. She had mentioned weeks ago, but something was off the way. They spoke about it, didn't match what I had been told. There were multiple mentions of he and him, and every time it came up, Laura's voice got even, quieter. My stomach twisted as far as I knew. This was supposed to be a girls' trip, just like their Vegas trip last summer and their ski trip to Colorado the year before. I had even thought about tagging along this time, especially since I had vacation. Days saved up when I brought it up to Laura a few weeks ago. She hesitated. It's kind of a tradition, she had said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Girls only?" "You know, besides I figured you'd be busy with that server migration project at work." She wasn't wrong about that. I did have a massive project coming up, so I let it go. But now, hearing this conversation, I regretted not pushing further after she ended the call. Laura came out of the office, her energy completely different. She was suddenly warm, affectionate in a way that felt unnatural. She came up behind me while I was sitting at my desk, wrapping her arms around my shoulders and pressing her cheek against mine. "Hey, you," she murmured, her voice soft, almost playful. We had always been close, but this felt different, like she was overcompensating for something. It reminded me too much of last year when we hit that rough patch. Back then, Laura had just started a big project at work, and suddenly she was spending late nights at the office surrounded by her new project team. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was ambitious, and I admired that about her. But then things started to feel off. She became distant, distracted when we were together, and when she was home, she was overly attentive, checking in on me, constantly planning surprise date nights, acting like the perfect wife. At the time, I convinced myself she was just making up for lost time now, though I wasn't so sure I had checked her phone back. Then, just to put my mind at ease, she'd been getting texts at odd hours and it made me uneasy, but nothing suspicious had come up. No flirty messages, no secret contacts, just work, talk in the usual group chats with Kimberly and Carol that had been enough to quiet my doubts this time. Though this time felt different. We shared our phone passwords. It started casually years ago when we needed access to each other's phones for emergencies, and we just never changed them after nearly a decade. Together you develop a sense for when something isn't right, and right now everything in me was screaming that something was very, very wrong. I waited until she was in the shower. My hands felt strangely steady as I unlocked her phone, but my chest was tight. I went straight to her messages with Kimberly and Carol. Normally their group chat was full of memes, inside jokes, and the usual complaints about work and their husbands, but this time it was different. Instead of casual chatter, I saw messages about her trip. Not their trip, that was the first gut punch he's going to love. That new bikini, OMG Laura, you have to take so many pics for us. My pulse pounded in my ears. They were gushing like a bunch of teenagers planning a secret date. Not 3 married women in their 30s. Every message made my stomach twist tighter. I scrolled further. That's when I saw the name Evan. At first it was subtle. Just little. I mixed in with their normal conversations about work and weekend plans, did you tell? Evan yet. He's going to freak Laura. You are living right now. My breathing felt shallow. Who the hell was Evan? And then I saw the photos. The first one was a guy standing by a lake shirtless, grinning like he walked straight out of a dating app profile. Tall, lean, good-looking, the kind of guy who knew he was attractive. The kind of guy women noticed. The second photo hit me like a truck. Laura, my wife, sitting next to him at a restaurant. His arm draped casually around her shoulder. The timestamp was from just 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, when Laura had told me she was out having dinner with her work friends, I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My hands tightened around the phone, my mind scrambling to make sense of what I was seeing. His name was Evan, and somehow this guy had been a part of my wife's life without me knowing anything about him. The chat was full of their giddy excitement, with Kimberly and Carol hyping her up like this was some fairy tale romance rather than blatant betrayal. You two going to have the best time. I stared at the message, feeling like I was about to be sick. 20 heart emojis. 20 Kimberly, who had just been at our house last weekend, sitting at our dinner table, laughing at my jokes. Carol knew they both knew, and they weren't just aware of what Laura was doing, they were encouraging it. Finding out your wife is cheating is one thing. Finding out she's planning a romantic getaway with another man, that different. The messages were all there, clear as day. They had booked connecting rooms at some luxury resort in Cabo. There were dinner reservations at high-end restaurants, couples massages, sunset boat rides. They weren't even trying to hide the fact that this was a romantic trip. And Laura, my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for almost a decade, was giggling in those texts like a teenager with a crush. I couldn't read anymore. My chest felt tight, my vision blurry with rage. I put her phone back exactly where I found it, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay in that house for another second without losing it. I drove aimlessly through the neighborhood, gripping the steering. Well, like it was the only thing keeping me together. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of our marriage, trying to pinpoint where things had gone wrong. Had she been doing this for years? Was Evan the first, or just the one I had finally caught? After an hour, I forced myself to go back home. I couldn't let her suspect anything yet. I needed to be smart. As soon as I walked in, Laura was on me. "Where did you go?" she asked, her brows furrowed in concern. "You never just leave without saying anything." I forced a tired sigh, shaking my head. "Sorry. Work call was brutal. Just needed to clear my head for a bit." Her expression softened instantly. Babe, you should have told me I was worried." "You were worried." The irony of it almost made me laugh. She reached for my hand, lacing her fingers through mine like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't spent the past few weeks planning a romantic trip with another man, like she wasn't already halfway out of our marriage. We sat down to watch TV together, her body curled up next to mine, her head resting on my shoulder. I could feel her breathing against me, warm and steady, and yet I felt nothing. I barely registered whatever show was playing. Instead, I was on my phone, scrolling through legal sites, reading up on divorce laws. I knew I had to end this. There was no fixing what she had done, no coming back from it, but just walking away felt too easy. If I just left, she would move on, probably right into Evan's arms. Maybe she'd even bring him into our house, the one we built together. Maybe they'd laugh about me, about how easily she had fooled me. No, that wasn't going to happen. I needed to know who this EV guy was. More than that, I needed to do something that would make them both realized. They couldn't just walk away from this without consequences. The betrayal wasn't just from Laura. It was from Kimberly and Carol too. Women who had sat at my dinner table, laughed at my jokes, and clinked glasses with me during celebrations. Women who had looked me in the eye and acted like friends, all while helping Laura plan a trip with her affair partner. At first, I dismissed the idea of flying out to spending thousands on last-minute flights and hotels just to confront them. Seemed crazy, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I wasn't just going to let her sneak away, play the perfect wife until she was out of sight. then spend the weekend wrapped around another man. Know if she wanted to be reckless enough to plan a romantic getaway right under my nose. She deserved to be caught in the most humiliating way possible. Thanks to their chat, I had everything: flight details, hotel reservations, dinner plans, spa appointments. It was all right. They're handed to me like an invitation. I didn't have to guess where she'd be or who she'd be with. All I had to do was show up, and I'd be bringing divorce papers with me. Looking back at the past 2 weeks, my life had turned into something out of those revenge movies I used to think were ridiculous. The kind where the husband finds out his wife is cheating and meticulously plans his payback. Except this wasn't a movie. This was my life, and I had played my role perfectly at home. I didn't let on that I knew anything. Every night we had dinner together, we watched our usual shows. I even helped her pack for the trip. She showed me their group chat messages, the ones filled with talks about spa days, beach lounging, and girls-only fun. "I can't wait," she had said. Just the night before, holding up a swimsuit for me to see, Kimberly says, "This one is perfect for tanning." I had smiled. "Looks great, babe. You're going to have an amazing time." She had no idea that while she was carefully planning the perfect weekend with Evan, I was working just as hard behind the scenes. I met with a divorced lawyer, spent hours making sure everything was documented, and even discussed recording the confrontation for legal evidence. My lawyer, who had clearly seen his fair share of messy situations, fully supported my plan. "If you catch them together, it's ironclad proof." He told me judges don't like cheaters, and trust me, her trying to hide this trip as a girl's getaway makes it even worse for her in court the last minute. Ticket cost a fortune, nearly as much as our entire honeymoon. But I didn't care. I pulled from our emergency savings. After all, this was definitely an emergency. I even booked a room at the same resort, though thankfully not on her floor the morning of her flight. I played my part flawlessly. I woke up early, helped her with her bags, and even made her coffee, like I always did. I drove her to the airport, listening to her talk about how excited she was for this much-needed girls' trip. She kissed me goodbye, thanking me for being such an understanding husband. I watched her walk through security, her new beach clothes packed neatly in the suitcase I had helped her zip up just the night before. The expensive sun hat when I had bought her for her birthday day was perched perfectly on her head. I scanned the terminal looking for Evan. I wanted to see the man she was throwing away 9 years of marriage for. But he wasn't there. Smart. He was probably on a different flight, making sure they didn't get spotted together while I waited for my evening flight. Laura kept texting me. "Updates just landed. The resort is incredible," she wrote, followed by a picture of her ocean view room a few hours later. Another message: "Look at this pool. You would love it here, babe. I miss you already." She even sent a picture of the infinity pool as if she actually wished I was there. Each message, each lie, just solidified my plan even more. I packed light, just a backpack with the divorce papers, a few clothes, and my phone, to record everything that night. After checking into the resort, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment of our relationship, the way we met at that electronics store, bonding over a mutual hatred for overpriced warranties. The tiny apartment we first moved into, suffering through summers with a broken AC, but laughing about it anyway. The years of inside jokes, road trips, and late-night talks about our future. It all led to this. The divorce papers sat in my bag, neatly prepared by my lawyer, who had made sure there were no loose ends. He had even included documentation of how she had used our joint savings to facilitate this affair, proof that would make any contesting impossible. All that was left was to catch them together the next morning. I played my role. Again, I texted her casually, "Hey babe, how's Cabo treating you?" She replied within minutes, sending me a poolside selfie. She was stretched out on a lounger, wearing that new blue bikini, the one she bought for this trip. So relaxing, just sunbathing before heading into town later with the girls. Then the detail I needed at the main pool near the lobby, the one with the swim-up bar. "Wish you were here." No, she didn't. That was my cue. I grabbed my bag, slid the divorce papers inside, and made my way down. The second I stepped onto the pool deck, I spotted them there, She was lying back on a lounger, Evan right beside her. He was casually rubbing sunscreen onto her legs, his hands moving slowly, intimately, like they had done this 100 times before. They looked comfortable together. Too comfortable, every working late excuse, every just a girl's night out. Every little moment I had brushed off as paranoia. It all came rushing back. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. I reached into my pocket-pressed record on my phone and slipped it into my shirt pocket. My lawyer had emphasized getting evidence if possible. Standing behind them felt surreal, like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. Evan glanced up at me but didn't react, probably assuming I was just another hotel guest passing by. He kept talking to Laura completely unbothered. "So I made a reservation at that place you wanted to try tonight," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "They've got this amazing seafood platter." Laura hummed in response, eyes still closed behind her oversized sunglasses, tilting her head back slightly as he rubbed sunscreen into her legs. She was enjoying this. Enjoying him. Meanwhile, her husband, the man she had promised a future with, was supposedly back home working to support this very lifestyle. She was now sharing with him. Evan finally looked up at me again, this time with mild irritation. "Can I help you, man?" he asked, his tone dismissive, as if I was an annoying waiter interrupting his vacation. That's when Laura finally noticed me. She sat up so fast that she knocked over her drink, the bright orange liquid splattering onto her towel. Her hands went to her sunglasses, pulling them off in a frantic motion as she rubbed her eyes like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then she just stared, mouth open, silent, frozen. Her reaction told me everything she never expected me to find out, let alone show up here. The weeks of lying, the secret planning her friends covering for her, it was all about to blow up in her face, and she knew it. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope, holding it out to her. "Go ahead," I said, my voice calm. "Open it." Laura hesitated but took it. She already knew what it was. We had signed refinancing papers for our house just last month. She recognized the weight of legal documents the second she held them. "Bruce, wait," she started, her voice shaking, but I ignored her. Evan stood up, his whole demeanor, shifted chest, puffed out shoulders, squared like he was ready for a fight. I'd seen his type before at the gym, guys who thought they could intimidate their way out of any situation. He was taller than me, but I wasn't worried. Then, he touched me, a firm hand to my chest, a deliberate push. "You need to leave." "Evans," said his voice lower, trying to sound authoritative. I actually laughed. This guy was telling me to leave while he was on a romantic vacation with my wife Laura. Grabbed his arm, panic in her eyes. "Evan, stop." She probably remembered how I had knocked some sense into a drunk guy who got aggressive with her outside a bar. Just a few weeks ago, Evan didn't listen. His hand pressed harder against my chest. Another push, more forceful. This time I reacted before I even thought about it. My fist connected with his jaw. The pact sharp and satisfying, he staggered backward, arms flailing, crashing into a lounge chair. His legs tangled in the frame, and before he could recover, he fell straight into the pool. I couldn't help but laugh as Evan splashed into the pool, his arms flailing like a drowned rat. A few guests around the deck gasped, but most of them just pulled out their phones, eager to record what was probably the most exciting thing to happen at the resort that day. Someone was already snickering behind me, and I heard a woman murmur, "Oh my God." Did you see that Laura, on the other hand, was in full panic mode? "Bruce, wait, it's not what it looks like," she blurted out, scrambling to her feet. That was rich. I took a slow, deliberate look at her, laid out in a tiny blue bikini, her skin glistening with sunscreen, sitting next to him at a couple's resort. Then I turned back to Evan, who was dragging himself out of the pool, dripping wet. His sunglasses gone, his hair plastered to his forehead. "Oh, really?" I said, voice dripping with sarcasm, "because it sure as hell looks like my wife is on vacation with another man." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "Where's Kimberly and Carol?" I asked, knowing full well they were probably back home at work, completely uninvolved in this supposed girls' trip. Her face twisted, scrambling for a lie instead. She yanked open the manila envelope just enough to glimpse the divorce papers inside, then quickly shut it, like that would somehow make them disappear. The color drained from her face, and then the tears came. Not quiet, guilty tears, but full-on public. Sobbing, a few guests turned their heads, a couple at a nearby table whispered to each other. Even the bartender at the swim-up bar had stopped mid-port to watch Evan, now standing with water dripping off him like a pissed-off cat, clenched his fists, and took a step toward me. "You think you're tough a hole," he snapped. I raised an eyebrow. "No, but I know I'm smarter." He was about to lunge when a few guys from a nearby cabana stepped between us. "Not worth it, man," one of them muttered to Evan, holding up a hand. "Security's coming," another guy asked. Nodding toward the hotel entrance, that was my cue. I turned and walked away. Not bothering to look back, I could hear Laura's flip-flops slapping against the ground as she tried to follow me. "Bruce, please." I stopped and turned just enough to give her a warning look. She froze. I didn't say another word. Just walked back to my room, packed my bag in under 5 minutes, and checked out before security even had a chance to find me. The front desk staff looked concerned, probably having already heard about the commotion at the pool. But they still called me a taxi without question. In less than 30 minutes, I was gone. 6 hours at the airport, an overpriced bar near my gate. Coffee after coffee, while I replayed the video on my phone over and over. My wife, the man she chose over our marriage, the timestamp perfectly aligned with her work trip. Excuse the whole thing had cost me nearly $3. 0 last-minute flights, hotel taxis, overpriced airport food, but seeing their faces, having solid video evidence. Priceless. That night back home, I turned off my phone and had the best sleep I'd had since finding her messages. Then, 2 days later, Laura showed up, still wearing her beach clothes, her hair a mess, looking like she hadn't slept the second I opened the door. The tears started. "Bruce, please." "I can explain everything," she said, her voice raw. "Evan's just a friend from work, nothing serious. Happened between us." The same tired excuses, the same hollow words. "Evan's just a friend from work. Nothing serious happened between us." The same damn lie she fed me every time I questioned her about staying late for team meetings. I wasn't about to entertain them anymore. I crossed my arms, leaned against the door frame, and let out a long breath. "Pack your things. Laura, go stay at your sister's place." She flinched, like she actually thought there was a chance I'd let her explain like there was. "Anything left to explain? Bruce, please just listen." "No." My voice was flat, final. "You don't get to beg for understanding after what you did. Just go." Her lips trembled. I could see the wheels turning in her head, searching for an argument, for an angle that might make me reconsider, but there was nothing left to salvage. Her shoulders sagged and she nodded weakly. "I'll come back for my stuff later," she mumbled. "Take what you need now. I'm changing the locks tomorrow." Her eyes widened at that, but she didn't protest. Instead, she wiped at her face and shuffled past me, her sandals slapping against the hardwood floor as she walked toward the bedroom. The same bedroom where we once laughed, planned our future, built a life together. Now she was just a stranger collecting the remnants of a marriage she destroyed. Her sister had always given me weird looks at family gatherings, like she knew something I didn't. Now I understood why when Laura finally left, dragging her suitcase behind her. I shut the door and locked it. That was the last time I saw her in our home. The days that followed were silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. I guess it finally hit her. There was no fixing this. Her friends hadn't reached out either. Maybe they were ashamed. Maybe they just didn't care either way. It didn't matter. They were as guilty as she was yesterday. I changed the locks, moved all her plans from the backyard to the garage. Funny how she used to fuss over them, like they were our children. Yet she hadn't even asked about them since she'd left after months of stress and legal battles. I could finally say this chapter of my life was over. The divorce was filed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself, again, finding out. About Laura's affair shattered the image I had of our so-called perfect marriage. But at least now I knew the truth, and I got to watch her perfect little plan fall apart at that resort. That video of Evan flailing into the pool had become a favorite. Among my friends, they still sent it around in our group chat, laughing about how poetic the whole thing was. Dude, you really made that guy eat chlorine instant karma, man. He folded like a lawn chair. I kept telling them to stop sharing it, but deep down, I didn't really care, if anything. I enjoyed the reminder that Laura didn't get away with it. Then a week after the Cabo disaster, Laura finally reached out a long drawn-out text about needing space to think things through, like she was the one who needed time to process everything. I just stared at my phone, shaking my head. Unbelievable, I muttered under my breath, as if she hadn't already had months, years maybe, to think, while she was sneaking around with Evan, as if she hadn't thought about it while lying to my face every time she came home late. I didn't respond. Then her sister called Bruce. Listen, Laura's been going through something. She needs your understanding right now. I almost laughed. Understanding? I said, keeping my voice. Even you mean like the kind she had for me when she was screwing Evan behind my back? There was a beat of silence, then a sigh. It's complicated. No, it's actually pretty simple. She lied, she cheated, she got caught, now she has to live with the consequences. I hung up because the betrayal wasn't just about Laura. Her entire friend group knew about Evan. They encouraged it. They covered for her. Kimberly and Carol, two women who stood beside her as bridesmaids at our wedding, had helped plan that romantic getaway. They all deserved each other. The divorce had been inevitable. There was no coming back from that level of deception, especially not after I saw them together at that resort, acting like teenagers in love while I was supposed to be back home, working overtime to pay for our new roof. My divorce lawyer was a real professional. He knew exactly how to handle everything. The video from the resort was solid evidence. Laura half-naked with another man lounging by the pool of a couple's resort. Then there were the screenshots, her group chat filled with details of their little scheme, and the bank transactions. My lawyer took special interest in a series of unexplained rides destinations in parts of town where Laura had no reason to be, and restaurant charges that were way too high for just one person 3 months ago. That's how far back her lease stretched, at least from what I could prove my lawyer. And I combed through our financial records, uncovering details that felt like peeling back the layers of a secret life I hadn't even known existed. There was a hotel booking from the same weekend Laura had claimed she was at a work conference that one had hard. I remember her calling me from her hotel room, talking about how exhausted she was from back-to-back meetings, how she missed me, how she couldn't wait to be home. Meanwhile, she was in bed with him. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to keep reading through the statements. Then there were the shopping trips, expensive lingerie stores. On day she told me she was out buying work clothes, coffee shop charges near Evan's office, Ubers to random locations that had nothing to do with her daily routine. Every little detail added up, painting an increasingly ugly picture of just how deep this affair ran. And then I found the receipt, a jewelry store. She'd bought him a watch for his birthday. I actually laughed when I saw it. A short, bitter sound, because I remembered that day she had come home with a neatly wrapped box and told me it was a gift for her dad. I had even made some joke about how she was a better daughter than I was a son, since I usually just got my own dad a bottle of whiskey. She had smiled, kissed me, and said, well, you know how much I love picking out gifts. The only thing missing from that memory was the knife she had twisted into my back. I handed the evidence over to my lawyer, and he barely glanced at it before nodding. This is more than enough. He said, we'll make sure this works in your favor, and he was right. Laura's lawyer had tried pushing for half of everything, but that argument crumbled the moment we presented the financial records. She had used our money to fund her affair. There was no coming back from that. In the end, I got the house. In my car, she walked away with just 30% of our savings, far less than she would have received in a normal divorce settlement. The judge hadn't been impressed with how she had embezzled from our marriage to pay for her little vacations and gifts. For Evan, the Cabo trip alone had been enough to make it clear that she wasn't just unfaithful, she was reckless, entitled, and selfish. And to my relief, I got to keep Robin. I hadn't even thought to mention him before I assumed she wouldn't fight for him, considering I was the one who walked him, took him to the vet, and actually loved him like family. But the moment Laura realized I was getting everything else, she had tried making a play for the dog, probably just to hurt me. It didn't work. So the marriage was over. The legal battles were done. And just when I thought I could finally breathe, the phone call started. Laura's mother wasn't ready to accept the truth. Her voice trembled on the phone, thick with desperation. "Bruce, sweetheart, we just heard the news," she said like she was talking to me after a bad day at work. "Not after her daughter had torched our marriage. I need to know, are you sure about what you saw?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Am I sure?" I echoed. "I have video, proof, screenshots, bank statements. How much more sure do I need to be?" She sucked in a sharp breath. Laura wouldn't. She would. I cut in, and she did. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her about the Cabo trip, about how I'd walked up to the poolside and found Laura draped over another man, laughing like she didn't have a husband waiting at home. I explained how I'd handed her the divorce papers right then and there, how she tried to spend some ridiculous excuse, as if standing in a bikini next to her friend from work at a Coop's resort wasn't proof enough. Her mother whimpered, the sound fragile, almost pitiful. "Oh my God!" "Yeah," I muttered. Then came the crying. I stayed quiet, waiting for her to process. This wasn't my burden anymore. I had carried it long enough. Finally, between broken sobs, she whispered, I don't understand, neither do I." I didn't stay on the phone much longer after that. There was nothing left to say, with Laura's family now fully aware of what she had done. I turned my attention to him. Evan. It had taken me one quick search through Laura's Facebook friends to find him. His profile was disgustingly wholesome, smiling family photos, beach vacations, Little League games, anniversary dinners, the perfect husband and father lies. His entire life was built on lies, just like my marriage had been. It made a sick kind of sense that he and Laura had found each other, two people willing to destroy their marriages for the sake of some excitement. I debated what to do for a full day before finally messaging his wife. It wasn't easy. Even after everything, I hesitated, because once I sent that message, I would be blowing up another family's life, but she deserved to know. So I typed it out. "Hi, you don't know me. But my name is Bruce. I was married to Laura until I found out she was having an affair with your husband. I have proof. If you want to see it, let me know." I hit send. She responded a few hours later. "Who the hell are you? Why are you messaging me about my husband?" I exhaled slowly. The defensiveness was expected. No one wants to believe that their world is about to collapse. "I understand this is hard to hear." I wrote back. "But I have video proof of them together in Cabo. I also have screenshots of conversations where they plan their trips. If you want to see the truth, I'll send it." Her reply was immediate. "You're lying. My husband loves me. He would never do something like that." I sighed. "Check his business trips." I told her, "Look at the dates. I'm about to send you, then compare them with the Uber receipts I found on my wife's account. If you still think I'm lying after that, then fine." And then I sent everything, the video, the group chat, screenshots, the receipts. This time, she didn't reply. Right away I could picture it, her scrolling through her own messages with Evan. Cross-referencing his excuse, uses his last-minute work trips, the times he came home late smelling like hotel shampoo. The pieces were falling into place. The shock on her face when the truth finally settled in was something I would never forget. Evan's wife now. Ex-wife, I assumed, had gone through every piece of evidence I sent her, each message and receipt chipping away at the reality she had once believed in. When she finally messaged me back a week later, her tone had completely changed. "I don't know whether to thank you or hate you," she wrote. "But I guess I'd rather know the truth and keep living a lie." I understood that feeling all too well, she told me. She had already contacted a divorce lawyer and moved in with her sister. There was no coming back from what she had seen. 15 years of marriage. She said, and he threw it away for nothing. I didn't respond to that. Because honestly, what was there? To say I'd spent weeks asking myself the same thing about Laura, the aftermath of all this had been intense, but in some ways satisfying. Both of our marriages were over, and both cheaters got exactly what they deserved, the cherry on top the now. From his video of Evan falling into the pool somehow, and I use that word lightly because I can't confirm or deny my involvement. It had made its way onto several social media platforms. There was something poetic about it, watching a man who had built his life on deception, getting dunked into a pool completely exposed while his mistress stood there. Frozen in shock, his company's HR department definitely wasn't thrilled about seeing their regional sales manager looking like an idiot on camera. I heard through mutual friends that he had to leave his job and MVE to another state after everything fell apart. I wasn't sure if his wife had taken him for everything in the divorce, but I hoped she did. As for Laura, well, last I heard she was still staying with her sister while looking for an apartment, probably regretting how a few months of excitement had caused her a stable marriage, our dream house and most of her savings. It was almost laughable. She had everything: security, a home, a future, but she wanted more, and now she had nothing. The lesson here is simple. If you can't be faithful, don't get married, because the truth always comes out in the end. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.